I'm going to put some words in your mouth. I hope you don't mind. This question, Ms. Charlotte, is I find myself attracted to things, then I become emotionally entangled until I find myself obsessed, and then ultimately I fall in love with those things. And while in love, I'm inspired to write poetry, go on hikes, buy flowers, either from Safeway or the cemetery. And then after a while, I come to realize that slowly this love that inspired me so is dissipating, slowly fading. And I am left with a memory, and the memory haunts me. I look at my companion. I am fully aware that I was once in love with her, longed for her, yearned for her, and now I can't stand her. And his question is there something that can inspire me without it becoming corrupted, that I can always, I suppose, live in inspiration, always be a poet? And just in case I'm not inspired to write poetry, at least I can be moved into this place of longing, where I can long to be in its presence so I can once again be inspired to write poetry. Something like that? It's a two-parter?
Well, second thing.
Where do you find it?
I don't know.
Okay. And then the other question is, life puts me in a situation where I want to find a cave and just hide in it. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to see anyone. I remember when one of our friends had lost his son at the age of, he was 17, he was playing basketball, and on the way home, he has a heart attack and dies. At any event, after a few weeks, after we buried him and all that, I tell his mother that I have some audios that she may be interested in. They lived in Elk Grove and I lived in Roseville, and it's about a 45-minute drive. And she said, yeah, come by, give me the audio cassettes. We didn't have, flash drives or any of those things way back then. So I had just spoken to her. I drive 45 minutes, I knock on the door, and the door remains unopened. I knock louder, unopened. So I just leave the cassettes outside and I just, drive back home. And she calls me about a half hour later and she says to me, I heard you knock and I even saw you through the window or curtain, but I was grieving the passing of my son. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to see anyone. I just wanted to be alone with my grief. I hope you don't mind. No. And I think it would have been very cruel if she had watched someone like Eckhart Tolle or Jesus Christ or anyone for that matter who would tell her, your son has passed, you're profoundly sad and sorrowful, but be a nice host. Go outside, open the door, give this man some tea or some food. I think to some extent our bodies and our basically organism, they're profoundly wise. They know when to keep their mouth shut. They know when you should speak. They know when you should be sad, and they know when you should be happy. And I think when you, especially in a culture such as this, which is a how-to culture, if you're sad, there is a way you could be happy. If you're grieving, there is a way you could kind of get yourself out of it. If you're a bad student, there is a way you could become a good student. And the truth is, cultures have been around for 5, 6, 7,000 years. there are certain things, most things in life don't have clear-cut answers. And you just have to kind of struggle through them.
It amazes me the similarities in stories and similarities in my life.
Yeah,
I too went through that phase, whereas I just want a cabin up in the woods by a lake. I didn't need the fire. I didn't need the electricity or nothing like that. I just wanted to be alone.
yeah.
It's a phase. You lose, you get back in it.
So, Julian?
I,
We can just talk about friendship. I'm not too much into masculinity and all this new age stuff. So look, we can approach all of these questions in two ways. And in describing these two ways, I'm going to go back in time and borrow from a story that came from the Near East. Probably not true, but as stories goes, it's a really nice one. There is this Chinese philosopher, maybe the Chinese Jesus Christ. His name is Lao Tzu. Some people say he never existed, some say he did. I guess it doesn't really matter. But Lao Tzu was about 70. And then there was this young kid whose name was Confucius. Confucius was, I don't know, about 30. So what you have is two completely different people at very, very different stages of life. Confucius is young, he is hopeful, he's a dreamer. He assumes that being young, being vigorous, being hopeful, that he can change the world. You know. Lao Tzu, he's older, he's been around, he's wiser, I suppose. And like Rambo, John Rambo, especially the fourth Rambo movie, he says, the world will never change. It's always this way. So you have two approaches. You can either fix things that belong to space and time, or you can fix things in a way that is divine. If you want to fix things that have to do with space and time, what you need to realize is the following. The world is always changing, always. گردون کمری ز عمر فرسوده ماست. The world is always turning. That's the function of the world. And as it turns, things begin to change. The answers you had yesterday will no longer be sufficient for the dilemmas of today. And so you have to struggle some more, you have to be observant, you have to become aware, you have to go and find tools and resources to find answers, for this new problem. So you go out with Jack doesn't work out, then you go out with Bob doesn't work out, then you will go out with Janet. And they're all failures. And you just keep thinking that it's the people you're going out with. That's the dilemma of Confucius. Today the problem is this, so let's fix the problem. Lao Tzu goes to him and says, no. The world is the den of thieves. It doesn't matter what answers you have. Time will steal those answers. You will once again find yourself in poverty. Why not do this? First, seek the kingdom of God. Find answers that are eternal. Instead of wondering why your relationship did not go well with Janet, ask an eternal question. What is relationship? What are the functions of a relationship? Why would you want to be in any relationship? These are questions that will never disappear. They have nothing to do with space and time. Time has no power to steal this kind of looking, viewing questions, because even if you die today, Julian, the question will remain. Why do people get into relationships? Is it because biologically we are just condemned to have companionship? Is it because we are lonely? And because we are lonely, we have no choice but to consume other people? And we, of course, we label it as companionship. Is it just a human dilemma that from the beginning of time, human beings have always been lonely? They've always been grieving the fact that they've been lonely. And they're always looking for a companion. Not just any companion, a companion who looks like them, tastes like them, smells like them, which makes them quite biased. And if that's the case, where do bias come from? Why do we have bias inside us? And all of a sudden you realize, well, this is no longer your dilemma. This is a dilemma that belongs to humanity, period. So when you talk about you having a couple of friends, it's irrelevant. The question is, why do we have friends? What kind of friendships exist out there? You know, when you ask about why, for example, if I'm in a mood of not talking, do I force myself to talk? Well, the question is, what's the function of speech, period? Why do we want to talk? You know, it's an interesting phenomenon. If you've read the Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran, and I'm going to paraphrase, you know, all of us in this class, hopefully, we have had these moments where you find someone out there whom you find attractive. You summon up the courage, you go to them and you say, I really like you. And then the like will turn into, I don't know, love, I suppose. And then you guys go to Berkeley, you know, high in the hills. You sit on the benches overlooking the rose garden. And you have a couple of Subway sandwiches, chips and Cokes. And you're sitting and the sun is setting. And for some strange reason, you're so full and you're so fulfilled that you realize there is really no reason to talk about anything. Just sitting next to him or her is sufficient. There is no need for language. There is no need to watch a movie, to have any conversation. You know, for some strange reason, intuitively, you just know that you have entered the kingdom of God or paradise. You're completely satisfied. There is nothing more that you want. There is no place higher that you can go. Wherever you want to go, it's right there. You have it. The only problem, of course, is because such relationships exist in space and time, they soon disappear. And you are left with a memory, and then you long for them to come back. Having said all of that, let me share with you a Persian poem, which will, to some extent, be linked to our good friend Sonia's question, hopefully. For those of you who don't speak Persian, my recommendation is go learn how to speak Persian. And then once you've mastered the spoken language, start learning how to read the language. Once you have mastered that part of the language, go visit the poems of such poets like Rumi, Sa'di, Hafiz, Nizami, and of course Baba Tahir. You will never, ever, regardless of how much you travel around this world, you will never find poets and poetry as rich, as subtle as the Persians. They are exquisite. So, and I'm not saying this because I'm Persian. I'm saying this because I'm Persian. ساقیا بده جامی زان شراب روحانی تا دمی بیاسایم زین حجاب جسمانی. بهر امتحان ای دوست گر طلب کنی جان را، آنچنان بیفشانم که از طلب خجل مانی. خانه دل ما را از کرم عمارت کن، پیش از آن که باز آید. I'm not sure, I forget. But let me give you a very crude translation. Sari, for those of you who've ever been to a bar, is the person who stands or sits behind the counter, waits for customers to go to him or her, and they ask for a drink. That's Sari, the bartender. Sharab is wine. For those of you who may not know the mythological tales about alcohol, it's actually quite interesting. Dionysus, who later became a symbol in the Greek world, a symbol for orgies, a symbol for creativity, a symbol for chaos, a symbol for inspiration. He was a very, very naughty young boy. And his mom had just had enough of him on that day, so she just leaves him outside. And Dionysus finds himself in a vineyard. And he sees all these fruits hanging. So he starts eating all the grapes that were there. And then he lays in the sun. And then he wakes up. And it seems that the heat generated by the sun and all the grape juice that lived inside his belly, they kind of had this beautiful relationship, and he wakes up and he's completely intoxicated. And so the Greeks came to believe that there is this spirit, this living force, this living entity in alcohol, that when you consume too much of it, it'll create or generate this heat inside you. And the social part of you, the historical part of you will disappear. And this other part of you that has never been touched by society, as the Hindus would say, the Atman, the kingdom of God, this uncontaminated pure self, will come out and rejoice and be creative. So this man who goes to this bar says, I am looking for a bartender. Because I've been to many, many, many bars in my lifetime. And I have tried many, many alcoholic beverages. They get me intoxicated. I become loose. I do things sometimes I'm happy about, most often very regretful. He says, I'm looking for a bartender who has this wine that will bring my soul out and will push my body beneath so I can never ever see it again. I am tired of being toyed with by this life, by the world. I'm tired of being bored. I'm tired of being angry. I'm looking for a bartender who can give me this divine wine, that I can be intoxicated once and for all. If that's a little difficult to grasp, let me invite you to go watch the movie Elizabeth, the first one that came out in 1985 or 86 or sometime in the 80s or 90s. Her army has been butchered, Elizabeth's army, and she is in her own private little church. She's kneeling before the Mother of God, Virgin Mary, and all of a sudden her advisor comes in and she screams at him, "Get out!" As he's about to leave, she looks at him and she says, "She was worshipped by all people, Virgin Mary. How is it that she had the hold of all people's hearts?" And her advisor says to her something very, very interesting. All of us down here want to be in touch with something that the world can't take away. There was something about Mary, there was something about Jesus, there was something about Malcolm X, Mahatma Gandhi, there is something about Muhammad. There is something about all the heroes and icons, Spider-Man, Superman. They have something that most of us don't possess. I don't know how they have it. I don't know how they came to possess it. But whatever it is that they have, when we are near these people, imagine if I was Malcolm X, if I was to come to this class, I don't really need to open my mouth to say anything. My mere physical presence in complete silence will have enough power to inspire all of you. In fact, the inspiration will be so profound, most of us in this class will be put to shame. Malcolm X lived a life where he only saw truth, honesty. He wanted transformation, not just personal, but also social. And he sacrificed his life, his family for that. Look at us. We ask questions about essays, we ask questions about grades, we ask questions about, oh, I lost my boyfriend or girlfriend. Our desires and our questions are so small. Do you see? And I suppose your question is, maybe, is there a wine out there? Is there some person out there who has some wine inside them that upon looking at this person, I can come in the cradle of these questions, these haunting questions that will give me a different image of myself, inspire different emotions, different thoughts. So I suppose we could talk about that a little. Just in case some of you may once in a while asking yourself or wondering why sometimes our conversations are so dark, consider the following. Imagine that I was an alcoholic for about 45 years. And in being an alcoholic, I lost my wife, I lost my parents, I lost my children, I lost my friends, I lost my house, my job, my kidney, my liver, all that. And then at the age of 45, I tried to sober up, and it took me about 15 years. Now I am 60, and now I've been sober for about 15 years. You, as a novice, come to me and say, Amir, I've been an alcoholic for about 15, 20 years. How can I sober? I'm not going to give you an easy answer. I'm not going to be positive. I'm going to tell you how difficult it is. And in you hearing the difficulty of the journey waiting for you, you're probably going to walk away saying, nah, Eckhart Tolle has an easier path for me. He just says, don't think about the past. Easy enough. I'll just do that. And so you'll walk away from this class and you'll be a follower of Eckhart Tolle for about a couple of weeks, only to realize you're back in the same spot. You're drinking again, you're depressed, you have lost everything, and you're always in a grieving mode. So, since I like ideas to be applicable, I always like to give things to you in as honest as I can, regardless of how they make you feel. There is a fountainhead in the world of philosophy. His name is Socrates. I don't know if he was blessed or he was cursed. He certainly wasn't blessed to be a good husband. He certainly wasn't blessed to be a good father. All the things that you and I believe to be important for Socrates, none of these things were. He didn't care for money. He didn't care for his marriage. He didn't care for his kids. He didn't care for politicians. He didn't care for writing. He didn't care for reading. He didn't care for anything. And I suppose in that sense, from our perspective, he was profoundly cursed. But he was blessed in a different way. He had a mind and a soul that was uncontaminated by desiring to have a wife or a husband, children, worldly prosperity, having a good grade, writing a book, becoming a Jordan Peterson on a stage or an Eckhart Tolle. He didn't want to be chained to anything. He wanted his spirit to always be free. He only enjoyed one thing in life: conversation. But not just any kinds of conversation. He wanted conversations to kind of inspire the human spirit, because he knew that human beings have a tendency of falling into forgetfulness, that you drink too much, you vomit, you wake up and you say, never again am I going to drink. But for that never again to be applied, you need to always remember what drinking does to you, what vomit does to you, what it does to your family. And to remember all these things on a daily basis is far too difficult. So our organism, because we don't like pain too much, it kind of sabotages everything, sabotages our own awareness and mindfulness. You're once again pushed into forgetfulness, and then you realize late at night you're at a bar, easy bar, near Lakeshore drinking. Not too much is known about the early life of Socrates, if he ever existed. All that I know really is that he ran across this woman. Her name is Diotima. For those of you who enjoy reading Native American stories, there is this kid named John Lame Deer. Some of you may have heard of his name. Lame Deer was a womanizer. He was a drunk. He was very, very handsome in his young age. He would oftentimes get in fights, waste money. One night, as the police is looking for him, a few people chasing after him because he had done some awful things, desperately he knocks on the door, and this woman opens the door and looks at him and says, "Oh, John, there you are. I've been waiting for you. What took you so long?" John had never seen this woman, had never met this woman before, and yet it seems that the hands of God was in play. And this woman teaches Lame Deer how to be a man, how to be able to speak well, how to be inspired by things divine. So Socrates runs into this woman whose name is Diotima, and the woman looks at Socrates and says, "Oh, Socrates, I've been waiting for you." "I don't even know who you are," Socrates says. "That's irrelevant. I'm here to teach you just only one thing. What is it that you want to teach me?" "Love." "Well, love is easy. You walk around Lakeshore, you see a nice, young, attractive person out there, you spend some time with them, then you love him." "Oh, no, that's child's play," this woman says. "I want to teach you what real love is all about." I suppose we could spend the entirety of the days remaining to the semester just talking about this encounter. You know, Sonia, Diotima had only one real student in her entire life. When you ask academic instructors, how many students have you served? Imagine like this is the last day, they're going to retire. And they say, like one of my good friends from long ago, who says, I've had about 47,000 students. And you say, wow, even Jesus Christ couldn't have that many. He only had 12 lousy ones. You had 47,000. Diotima had only one student. How is that possible? That you have all this wisdom, and wisdom has a tendency of making people curious, inspiring them. They leave with confusion, they leave with thoughts, emotions. How is it that wisdom remains so invisible, so alone? It makes no sense, and yet that's the way it is. Socrates accidentally knocks on this woman's door. Are there accidents? Are things fated? You know, if you say this is an accident, you're just here accidentally. You just signed up for 3 class. If on the other hand, you believe in these magical realms, that the hands of God are always in play, you are here for a reason. You are here to learn something. You have certain questions. You may not be aware of those questions. You may not even be able to ask them. In fact, you don't even need to ask them. But if this is your fate, this is your destiny. You see, we have lost that magic as secular people. We are far too rational. We are far too calculated. It's something that happened in the 19th century called instrumental rationality. But it's not enough that you're here. Are you at a place where you can listen? See, right now, as I'm looking at you and I'm talking to you, maybe with you, not really with you, just talking to you, you're hearing things. You can't listen, you're just hearing. If I use the right words, and I'm not quite sure what they are, whatever words I use, if they trigger something inside you, then you will listen. Right now, I'm just rambling. And you're saying to yourself, why is this guy looking at me? It's making me a little uncomfortable, sweating a little bit. But then as I keep looking at you and talking to you, certain buttons inside you keep getting pushed. And now you listen. But you're not really listening to me. You're listening to the buttons being pushed. And as those buttons get pushed, now you begin to listen. See, first you hear rambling. Then, when the rambling gets triggered inside you, now you listen. As you're listening, you're beginning to hear the voice that now lives inside you. And as you listen to the voice that's coming out of you, to you, now you're beginning to hear the messages therein. But I'm not really quite sure that at what stage people get to listen. Not listen to themselves, but listen to the other. See, your job here is not to understand me. Your job here is the following. Let's say I am Socrates. I am not, but let's just hypothetically just say I'm Socrates. I say things that are interesting to you, but you're an animal. Like your ancestors some 30, 40, 50,000 years ago, Paleolithic, Stone Age era. What is it that these people want to do? They want to secure their future. They want to make sure that their naked bodies remain protected. They want to make sure that late at night they have a shelter. They want to make sure that there is food. What they're looking for is power. With power, they can create resources. With resources, they can live in comfort. No confusion, no agitation, no dread, no fear. Power. As I say things to you, You do things that are very natural to you, your organism, and to our ancestors, which is what? Power. What is he saying? How can I understand? Because the moment I can understand what he's saying, confusion will go away, fear will go away, dread will go away, confusion will go away. But you see, you and I can't understand Socrates because Socrates doesn't come from the human realm. Jesus does speak the language of people, but his language, his intentions, his message comes from a different place. Okay? So you're going to leave the class confused, and you're going to talk it over with your friends, you're going to talk it with your parents, with your kids, with your companion, because you want to understand what this is happening. You can't. And if you do, it's always going to be wrong. Socrates is here. You're here.